Hello students, today we're going to look at section 2.4, which is solving equations with variables on both sides. And when we say both sides, we mean both sides of the equal sign. So there's going to be variables on both sides of the equal sign that we have to deal with. So in our first example, we have 2 plus 5k equals 3k minus 6. Now what I always recommend, and you don't have to do this, but I strongly recommend it, is to always start with the smallest variable, or the variable with the smallest coefficient. Now, if you don't remember the word coefficient, coefficient is the number in front of the variable. So in 5k, 5 is the coefficient. In 3k, 3 is the coefficient. So I want to look for the smallest variable, and I want to start there. The reason I encourage that is because if you start with the smallest variable, you usually end up with a positive coefficient of the variable, which is always better to deal with than a negative. Okay? So I've got 2 plus 5k equals 3k minus 6. So my smallest variable is 3k. And I notice that that smallest variable, 3k, is positive. So in order to start with that, I have to subtract 3k on both sides because that's the opposite of positive. So I'm going to subtract 3k, and I get 2 plus 2k equals negative 6 because those 3k's cancel out. Now I'm back to a two-step equation. 2 plus 2k equals negative 6. So now I don't ever start with the variable in a two-step equation. I start with the number outside the variable. And so I'm going to subtract 2 from both sides because this is a positive 2 and the opposite is subtraction. And so I get 2k equals negative 8 because negative 6 minus 2 is negative 8. Divide both sides by 2 and I get k equals negative 4. Let's check it just to make sure. 5 times negative 4 is negative 20, and 2 plus negative 20 is negative 18. And so I go over here, 3 times negative 4 is negative 12. Negative 12 minus 6 is negative 18, so I got negative 18 on both sides. I'm good. Okay? Again, I encourage you, but you don't have to, start with the smallest variable. So our next problem over here is x over 2 plus 1 equals 1/4 x minus 6. Don't let this x over 2 throw you, because x over 2 is the same thing as 1/2 x. So I could rewrite this as 1/2 x, so it looks more like the 1/4 x. Plus 1 equals 1/4 x minus 6. Okay? So anytime we have that variable over a denominator, you can put the 1 there. Oh, have I told you that story yet? About why we don't put 1s there? I should do that sometime. So I could put a 1 here, and then it'd be 1/2 x, and that's a little bit easier to deal with. So I've got 1/2 x plus 1 equals 1/4 x minus 6. I look for my smallest variable, which is 1/4, because 1/4 is smaller than 1/2. It's positive, so I'm going to subtract 1/4 from both sides. Yes, I am subtracting the x. Minus 1/4 x. Those cancel out. And I'm left with 1/2 minus 1/4, which is 1/2, sorry, it's 1/4. I am so not thinking clearly this morning. So I got 1/4 x plus 1 equals negative 6. Again, 1/2 minus 1/4 is 1/4. You can do that on your calculator. Just remember to put your parentheses, your fractions inside parentheses. So now I have 1/4 x plus 1 equals negative 6. Subtract 1 from both sides. 1/4 x equals negative 7, because negative 6 minus 1 is negative 7. Now what we talked about in the last video is I can divide by 1/4 on both sides, or I could multiply by 4, which is the reciprocal of 1/4 on both sides. Doesn't matter. I could do either one. So in this case I'm going to divide by 1/4. Divide by 1/4. 1/4 divided by 1/4 is just left with 1x. And then negative 7 divided by 1/4 is the same thing as negative 7 times 4, which is negative 28. And I'm just doing this in my head. You can use a calculator. It's okay. No problems. X equals negative 28. Our next example includes the distributive property. I love the distributive property. It's absolutely wonderful. Sometimes it makes you want to do this. But we'll see. Distributive property. 6 times the quantity of 5n minus 3 equals 1/3 times the quantity of 24m plus 12. So let's use the distributive property. 6 times 5m is 30m, and 6 times negative 3, don't forget that negative, is negative 18, equals 1/3 times 24 is 8m, and 1/3 times 12 is plus 4. If you're not very confident or familiar with multiplying fractions times whole numbers, use your calculator. Okay? So now, again, I'm going to go back to what I said earlier. Find your smallest variable, start there. So I've got 30m and 8m. So I'm going to start with the 8m. It's positive, so that means I have to, yes, subtract. So I subtract 8m, and 30 minus 8 is, wait for it, yes, 22m minus 18 equals 4. And now what do I have to do to both sides? Exactly, add 18. So 22m equals 22. And now what do I do to both sides? Hint, hint. Divide by 22, yes. M equals 22 divided by 22 is not 0. 22 divided by 22 is 1. So the answer is M equals 1. Let's check it out to make sure. 5 times 1 is 5 minus 2 is, 5 minus 3 is 2, and 6 times 2 is 12. 24 times 1 is 24, plus 12 is 36. 36 times 1/3 is 12. I got 12 on both sides, so I'm good. And for the last example that we're going to do today, we have some distributive property, but we also have some extra stuff. So let's do the distributive property first. 5x plus 3 equals 3 times 5x is 15x. 3 times negative 4 is negative 12 minus 10x. Before I do anything else, I want to see if I can combine like terms on the same side of the equal sign. Here I've got a 5x and a 3. I can't combine anything there. On the other side, I have 5x minus 12 minus 10x. Sorry, that's 15. 15x minus 10x. So I can combine the x's. So I do 15x minus 10x, which is 5x. And then the negative 12 just stays. Okay? So I've combined everything I can on the right-hand side, and I just write down what's on the left-hand side. So I've got 5x plus 3 equals 5x minus 12. Start with the smallest variable. Uh-oh. They're both the smallest variable. So pick one. They're both positive, so I'm going to subtract. So I subtract 5x from both sides. So I get 3 equals negative 12. Does 3 equal negative 12? No. 3 doesn't equal negative 12. That's a lie, and not truth. So in this case, because I got rid of all my variables and I'm left with a false statement, then my answer is no solution. Because there is no number that I could plug into both sides where I could get equal. When I get down here and I've gotten rid of both of my all of my variables, there's no variables left, and I'm given a false statement, 3 does not equal negative 12, then that means I have no solution. Sometimes you'll get no solution. Sometimes you might get all real numbers when you have 3 equals 3, something like that, okay? And then most of the time, you'll get one number that's the correct answer. So be careful, look for no solution, look for all real numbers, but be careful in solving because you're most of the time just going to get one answer. And here are your practice problems for this video. The first one is 8r minus 10 equals 3 times the quantity of 6 minus 2r. And the second one is 6 times the quantity of y minus 5 equals 2 times the quantity of 10 plus 3y. Work those out, show your work, take a picture, submit it through Edmodo, and you're done.